Hi everyone, and welcome to my hair and fur tutorial. I'll be showing you how to make this scene. It's pretty much entirely made using hair and fur modifiers, like all the cacti and grass hair on the character. Here's what it looks like properly rendered with a different rendering setting. And I'm going to be using pre-rendered shots because rendering on my crappy old laptop takes a while. So yeah, let's get started, shall we? So new scene. New all. Okay, go to the create menu, go to systems over here and spawn a biped. This will be what we're working with, what we're going to put hair on. You can put hair and fur on any polygon thing, it doesn't really matter. So let's select the head here, convert it to an editable poly, and just up the poly count in the modify panel here by going to turbo smooth. And now we have a few more polygons to work with. So just collapse all here so that it's actually just a single model, not something with a modifier. And now let's add some hair and fur. And voila. Now if we were to keep, did not actually render that, but yeah, if we were to use this, then we got kind of a Wolfman thing going on. He's got hair everywhere. We don't want that. So let's select some polygons that we want the hair to grow of. You can maintain your selection and add to it by holding Control, and remove from it by holding Alt. Okay, that looks pretty good. And now we're going to go to Update Selection. There. Now we would wind up with this. So let us up the hair count a little bit here. So we'll go over to the, still in the modified panel here, I've just stretched it into two panels. We're going to up the hair count a little bit, so maybe, I don't know, like 20 or 30,000, so it doesn't look quite so sparse. It'll take a lot longer to render, but it'll look a little better, as you can see here. Now let's add a sunlight modifier, just to make it look a lot better. Rather, a daylight modifier. Don't get those two confused. Daylight, not sunlight. So yes to everything, because 3D Studio Max knows what it's doing. These don't really matter, these height and width settings. Let's, I don't know, set it to like maybe 10 in the morning, and great. And now if we were to render this character right here, he would look a lot better, as in right here, as opposed to right here. You can do this for anything and it'll just like crank up the awesomeness. Very recommended. Okay, same different model, same thing. Now we're going to do a little bit of styling here. So yeah, let's get down to it. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the styling operations because it's pretty self-explanatory. You can you got this 3D thing. If I were to rotate the view, you would see it's actually 3D. And yeah, so just get a little hairstyle going on there. The orange lines here are the actual guides. You're not actually controlling the hair, you're just controlling the guides, i.e. these little markers. Let's scale this out a little bit. Oh, stand it up, poof it out, especially on the edges. Great. And now scale it out there. Maybe trim it a little bit. Chomp. There we go. Okay, got a little bit of hairstyle going on. Yeah, so you can only actually style the guides. The hair is just kind of interpolated between the guides, depending on the individual hair strand's position. So now we've got this going on, but we want it to look smooth like this. The reason it doesn't actually look smooth, the reason the hair is not following the guides, is because the frizziness and the kink is turned up too high. So let us go down here, still in the modify panel for the hairy object with hair and fur selected, and go down to frizz parameters and kink parameters and just turn these way down. Oh, first we have to turn off style. That's why everything is grayed out. So finish styling, and now we turn down the kink and frizz. So frizz tip, that's what's really killing us here, because the tips are repelling each other. We should keep a little bit of frizz just to keep it a little bit natural, and a little bit at the roots too, so the roots repel each other too. But now it would look a lot better. Okay, there's other functionality here that you can use. For instance, if you're too lazy to do all the styling right off the bat, you can go to Dynamics here and just hit, one sec. Whoa. These menus are always hard to control. Okay, if we go to Live in Dynamics, then it'll simulate everything with the gravity and stiffness and hair turned to these default settings. So if we turn stiffness all the way up, then the hair is suddenly standing on end or in the actual style that we chose. We can turn root hold down, so even if the stiffness is up, it doesn't actually have that much control over it because the roots are, soggy. We can make gravity negative if we want to make this kind of a silly scene. This is actually pretty useful for the grass because then when we add wind, the grass is trying to go up, but it keeps getting blown to the side and it looks really nice. Okay, let's turn all this off. You can also actually simulate this and save it, and save as a stat file, and then you can use it in animations. If we were to keep this live and then try and record it with our animation slider down here, nothing would happen. You have to simulate it, load it as pre-computed, and then go ahead and run the animation. Okay. Oh, and you want to make sure that polygon collisions are on, so that if we were to turn all of these settings right down, then the hair would not actually fall through the skull or the object that the hair is attached to, because that would look really weird. Okay, so now we have a character. Now I'm going to show you how to add colors to the hair based on a underlying texture. So if you look here, you can actually see that the hair is different colors depending on where it's growing out on the skull, which is textured with a wood texture. So I'll just show you that. So we still have the skull selected. Just go to the editable mesh and press M to bring up the materials. Okay, let's go ahead and spawn a standard material. Now for the diffuse color here, which is basically like the standard, color map or texture that's applied to the object. Let's go with bark. That should make an evident effect. Okay, and now we add this to the object. We click the little light bulb here to show material in viewport so we can actually see it. Okay, so now it looks like it's just averaging all the colors together. This should not be. What's actually happening, I think, is our texture is too small. So let us just increase the size of that texture. Okay, I figured out how to actually get texture to apply to this. So for some reason, this time the biped did not actually have UV coordinates, which allow a texture to stick to the polygons, basically. We're going to have to give it some. So we're going to go down here to UVW map, and it doesn't really matter. This is just a demonstration, but these map the texture to the object in a different manner. So let's go with box, because why not? Turn down the size a little bit, maybe. Okay, and now we should see really weird colored hair growing out of here once we set the coloring. So let's go back to the hair and fur on this object and scroll down to the material parameters, and here we have the colors. So we could use this to change, the color of the tips and the roots if we wanted, and we were boring, but we're going to actually, add a texture to it to make it really exciting. Actually, I just want to render this first to give you a quick idea of what's going on. So, render. Okay, that's what it currently looks like with brown root color and bright pink tip color. As you can see, it fades from brown to bright pink, pretty self-explanatory. We can also add a mutant color here, which is white, and turn up the percent of hairs that will be mutated to white. And then if we were to render it, then okay, pretty crazy looking, eh? If we zoom in, we can see that some of the hairs are white while the rest of them retain the original characteristics we gave them. Okay, let's get rid of all that there. So mutant color 0. Root color, we shall choose a bitmap, our bark again, and it will adopt the UV mapping, or UVW mapping rather, that we chose for the object itself. And now we shall do a quick render. Oh, and you want to set these to white, because These will kind of tint the map that we just supplied. And now I will go ahead and do a render to demonstrate how the textures have colored the hairs that are growing out of that spot on the texture. Okay, and how freaky looking does that look? And you can do this with any texture you want, and you can get some pretty cool results doing so. So I'll just show you some quick videos on YouTube I found that demonstrate this pretty well. Crappy laptop. Crappy laptop. Okay, so this is made by someone who actually works at Autodesk, so he has a little bit of an advantage on the next few guys I'm going to show you. Who would have thought that technology would get so obsolete in just 3 years? Wow. It actually worked. Okay, so here's what I wanted to show you. As you can see, this guy textured a dog and then grew the hair of the dog, and wow, that was useless, but it made the dog look pretty cool. You can also just, instead of using the hair that I just showed you, which is extremely easy to do and looks really nice but takes a long time to render, you can just make the hair out of polygons. See, he's just you have to mess around with maps a lot, and it's kind of advanced, and it takes a lot more effort than just growing the hair out using the built-in features, but it will render at a decent pace as opposed to what we're using. What we're using, you're talking like, say, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes per frames, depending on how complex your scene is, how much hair you have, and how close you are to the hair. That really matters. If you're close to the hair, it'll take a lot longer to render, and it can take hours to get even like a few seconds of footage, which is why the polygon hair is something to consider. But the hair that we're growing is actually fully dynamic, as you'll see here. You can just pause. Okay, so what can be done with fully dynamic 3D Studio Max hair. Despite the extremely long render times, it can look pretty cool. Okay, great. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to make the grass. So let us close down all this junk. Okay, we shall keep our little character here to act as a subject. Go to the Create panel, Standard, and spawn a plane. And R to scale, let's just increase that. W to translate. And while it's still a primitive, let us up the amount of segments it has so we have more resolution to work with here. I don't know, say like 50. Oop. By 50. Great, now we got a lot to work with. We'll make it a editable poly, rather, and we shall go to the vectors, or vertexes, and we're going to select them using the method of selecting, like this, and then we can use soft select and very quickly make awesome looking terrain. So let's just increase the fall off, and now we want to translate these up and down, not left and right, because that will create an effect we don't want. Control to keep selected. Turn down the soft selection a little bit. Sorry, I usually listen to music. Okay, let us continue uninterrupted by random YouTube startups. Okay, great. Now we got some really awful looking terrain. Sorry, I only spent like 10 seconds on this. Okay, now we are going to make a little path for our person to walk on using a similar method. So we've got our path. Let's go to R and just shrink it along the vertical axis to flatten it out. Translate it down. Great. Now we have a walking path. Okay, and now that we have our surface, we are going to add a hair and fur modifier again. And this time, instead of doing anything crazy with the settings here, we are going to... Okay, I found it. Sorry, it's been a little while. We want to go to Tools, and in here we have a whole bunch of default settings. for the hair and fur. So let's go to presets, load, and tall grass, and voila, we have grass. Now this obviously needs a little bit of tweaking, so let us shorten the grass a fair bit by going to cut length and just decreasing this. Oh, okay, that looks a lot better. And if we were to render right now, we'd have something that looks like that. So we're also going to want to decrease the root thickness. The tip is already set to 0, but we need to make the roots thinner. How about 2? And now if we were to render it, it would look something like this. A lot better. And we also want to make it so that she's not actually walking in grass, or he or she, I don't actually know what we've modeled here. So we are going to go to our plane and or our modifier, and we have the path still selected actually. So let us press Control I to invert our selection. Whoop. Yes. Probably want to turn off that selection. Great. Okay, just reselect it now. So this is where we want hair not to show up. Okay, now Control I to invert the selection and update selection, and now we only have grass growing not on the path, which is pretty awesome. Okay, great. Now if we were to render it, it would actually look something like that. Now we want to add some cacti and stuff. So you can, first of all, we're going to want to duplicate this because you cannot have multiple types of hair on one layer, I think. So we'll go to Translate. Oh, have to turn off polygon selection first. Okay, now we go to Translate, and now we hold Shift and translate it down. Translate it down ever so slightly. Great. We want to, if we keep it as an instance actually, then when we modify the original object, as can be seen here, yes, then the object below it will modify as well. See? Pretty awesome, useful. Okay. Now let us go to our second object here. We're going to want to change the type of hair that is growing out of there. So 3D Studio Max actually does have special systems to grow really nice looking trees and stuff, but we can't actually use them. I'll just show you where those are real quick. Alright, standard primitives, and just go to AEC extended, and now we can spawn trees and stuff. And that's a pretty big tree. We could try scattering these all over, but it will not look right. In fact, these cacti here, they were supposed to be pine trees. It's just that only the, I don't know, trunk, part of the trunk, came with it, not even the branches. So we're just going to make our own objects and ignore the awesome built-in trees, unfortunately. So we go to standard primitives. Let's just spawn a cylinder to keep this simple. Or a teapot because I think I am hilarious. Okay. And that will be our hair. Okay, now we want to go over here. Select our object and go to the hair and fur modifier. And we want to choose instance node under tools. And we're going to click this teapot. And now we should have teapots. Yep, we got teapots everywhere. And you can do that with pretty much any polygon object, as long as it has enough polygons that can be bent and twisted like normal hair can. So we have a few too many polygons we want, or a few too many objects. We want these to be akin to trees. So let's just turn it hair we have growing. And also with the grass, you can see it's all bunched up. You've got, out of each hair location, you've got several hairs growing. That is because we have multi-strand turned on, and it's currently growing 10 out of every strand. So let's just turn it to 1. Great, now we have a lot less teapots. Now we want to increase the size of our hairs so that they look like trees, because that's what we're going for here, in case you were not aware. Cut length. There we go. Now we got some decent looking trees going on. Oh, it looks like it maxes out at 100, so you can only have fairly short trees. Oh, scale it up a little bit more. Okay, and now we have a bunch of tree pot teas. I feel like I should be doing a bad National Geographic imitation right now, but I can't think of anything. Okay, great. And now if we were to render, let's just do a quick one to make sure everything looks good. Pause. Just going to unpause it for a moment while it's rendering to show you it will actually create shadows from all of the hair and fur and stuff by default. If you want the hair and fur and grass, etc. to shadow itself, then you have to turn on a setting which I'll show you soon. Okay, great. And how good does that look? We've got our kind of Alice in Wonderland thing going on here. We could texture the ground if we wanted, but I'm far too lazy. Okay, great. So you get the basic idea. Let's show you a little bit of animation real quick, just to finish up this tutorial. So, first we need to actually spawn something for it to interact with. So let's go to spawning, and I think it is space warps, yep, and add a wind space warp. Great. Now rotate it towards the scene. Maybe put it at an angle so it looks extra cool. And now we have to actually manually set it to affect everything that we want it to affect. So we'll go to Modify, Hair and Fur, External Forces, and Add. Now we're only doing this for the teapot layer, so the grass itself will not actually be affected. And click on the wind with after we hit Add, and it will show up in External Forces here. Great. Now if we go to Live, oops, I should probably keep the teapot layer selected so we can actually work with it. Great, okay. If we go to live, the teapots kind of flop all over the place because we have gravity turned on. Let's turn up stiffness and root hold, and as you can see, they're falling through the ground. So we shall turn on polygon interaction so that they actually check to make sure they're not falling through the ground. Now let's turn gravity down to -1 to make them all want to stand on end. Now the wind is actually affecting them, but it's not very evident, so I think we can fix that. Let us go and select the wind object and turn the strength way up, and turn the turbulence and frequency up, and the turbulence and frequency, oh, you can just ignore the fact that the grass is all clumped right there. I accidentally selected a single polygon and then it updated. But anyways, the turbulence will just create a little bit of randomness in the wind, and the frequency will make the wind pulse. So it'll be really strong and then kind of weak, really strong, then kind of weak. And then decay, we're not going to have to mess around with that. Now let's go over here again and go to live. Down here at the bottom in dynamics, turn live back on. Now all the teapots will try and stand on end, and they should be getting buffeted by the there we go. They were just a little bit too stiff. So now as you can see, they're waving around because they're getting blown by the wind. And you can do this with any hair whatsoever. And great, I think that's pretty much everything, except I just want to mention one more thing. So in the original renders here, you can see first it's rendering without shadows, and then it's rendering with shadows. You see the difference? Really shiny, and then shadowed and realistic. You'd probably have to mess around with the hair, make it a little bit brighter. But anyways, shadows are an important part of this. So we shall turn off live, first of all, so it's not completely destroying my CPU. Interestingly, 3ds Studio Max only renders on the CPU. It doesn't use the graphics card at all. The graphics card is used to do the layout, and if you use the graphic card for rendering, then the layout would be completely unresponsive. But anyways, we shall go to rendering. We shall go to effects, I believe. Yes. And then we'll go to add, and add hair and fur. And then with hair and fur selected, because if hair and fur is not selected, you will not have any of this stuff down here. We want to go to where it says hairs buffer and change that to MR prim. And now we have awesome shadowed hair like this as opposed to this. And that was my tutorial on 3D Studio Max. I hope you enjoyed.